You could read porn magazines out in public, but you couldn't read science fiction magazines. People would read them inside a copy of the National Geographic. One of the dodges that they used to make it seem as if science fiction was really worthwhile was that it predicted the future. Yes, we predict the future. Why, Jules Verne predicted the submarine. Why, H.G. Wells predicted the time machine. Well, that, of course, was nonsense. Science fiction no more predicts the future than you do. But with hundreds of writers writing at all times and predicting every damn thing there was to predict, eventually they would hit a few things right. It's amazing the things they never did hit right. Even Robert Heinlein, the great seer of the future, never understood that it would be the government that would be sending rockets to the moon. He always thought it was going to be private industry. Well, it wasn't. It was always the government. That is until now. I hold in my hands a press release. This is called a press release. I have scraped it very diligently so that the horse manure and cow flop that's on it usually is not here, and I'm able to hold it without doing myself any great damage. This is a press release from Columbia Pictures. NASA and a consortium of corporations sponsoring the first commercial space mission in U.S. history have chosen Columbia Pictures and its action-adventure fantasy film, The Last Action Hero, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, to be the first advertiser in space. On the main fuselage of the rocket, there will be an advertisement for The Last Action Hero. I really hate giving them any promotion like this. And on the payload, which will orbit the Earth for a minimum of 2 years, conducting microgravity experiments, this moron ad for this dopey movie will be circling the Earth. Can't you say, honey, let's go out tonight with the telescope and take a look at Arnold's ad again? Well, the president of Space Marketing, Inc., do you love that? Space Marketing, Inc., it's worthy of Frederick Pohl and C.M. Kornblum, said, after reviewing many possible promotional partners for this historical event, Columbia Pictures was chosen for their ingenious creativity that represents the same goals as the American space program. I didn't realized the American space program's goal was to make money for Columbia Pictures and dopey action-adventure movies and make Arnold Schwarzenegger even more money. I don't know why it bothers me. I mean, it's basically a pretty stupid thing, this press release. I suppose it's because here we are down here on this mud ball, looking up at the stars, maybe the last 40, 50 years, actually thinking we're going to reach them someday and hoping that we're a noble enough species to do it. And when we get the chance, we turn it into the same kind of cheap, sleazy advertising medium as everything else on the planet. Boy, does that make me unhappy. Does that make you unhappy?
Just when you thought it was safe to put on your headphones, you entered the darkest, wildest, sexiest depths of technology. And here to keep you on the bleeding edge of science, tech, and ethics is the Rated R radio star, the man of tomorrow, the golden stallion of the tech world, Brian Sovryn. He has a huge brain. And now, here's Brian.
Woo, baby! They asked me! They say, Stallion, what does the good life look like, baby? And I say, ooh. I said, baby, when the neighbors can only assume that you're running a brothel out of your house, woo, that's the good life. Oh, baby. Well, unfortunately, right now, I cannot do that. I am not doing that because I am alone. And the lovely and hyper-intelligent Dr. Stephanie Murphy, the love of my life, and oh yes, she is down in Anarchapulco, a place that I dare not tread because I can't do it. I can't stand it. But anyway, I cannot wait for her to come back. I've heard from a lot of Sovereign Tech listeners actually kind of giving me boots on the ground reports of what's going on in Anarchapulco. Some people saying some of the speakers are good. Other people saying some of the speakers are what in the goddamn fuck. And of course, some of you have even said, and I know I got your emails, they knew that I wasn't going to be there for very, well, really obvious reasons. But they also, they knew that Stephanie was going to be there because she's going to be a speaker there. And they said, Stallion, don't worry. not that Stephanie can't take care of herself. Obviously, she certainly can. Just a remarkable woman. I mean, a veritable goddess walking the earth. Okay. But, they said, Stallion, we'll keep an eye on things. Don't you worry. And thank you for that. I am so ridiculously honored. But anyway, can't wait for her to get back to me. Oh, I am not at peace when I'm home alone. Like, it's terrible. I'm just like, I'm making animal noises all that, and then and I'm just screaming out like I'm talking like Emperor Palpatine the whole time. Do it, just, yes, excellent, Lord Vader. I mean, like I'm so bad when I'm completely alone. So anyway, but not exactly alone, of course, because I always have you, the Sovryn Tech listeners, to join me at least once a week. And of course, a lot of you are now joining me many, many times a week with all of the exclusive Patreon content that gets out there that can end up right in your podcast feed if you just become a patron. You'll get a private feed, you'll get the double secret Sovryn Tech feed, and you'll get access to now hundreds of hours of content already. That gets made fresh every week. This isn't like I'm not just rehashing old stuff. Okay, I'm giving you new things. You get to do the Q&As. People are loving the shit out of those. Particularly this week, we talked about time travel and why I wouldn't kill Hitler. Whoa! But you got to be a patron to hear that. Anyway, let's You're here for the science and tech. So why don't we break into it, okay? Enough me talking about what a sod I am right now. But sod. Sometimes I start yelling that out. Like, I'll start rocking it out just like in Superman 2, with General Zod. Come, son of Jor-El, kneel before Zod. Was that Terrence Stamp? Boy, he was good. Anyway, let's get into the foreplay before I really go nuts. And actually, just to calm myself down, I just went to the movies. I'm literally just coming back recording this on a Saturday. It is February 25th, 2017 HE, and I just got back from seeing The Great Wall, which I enjoyed. I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. But that's because I've been around the world, for a long time. And in so doing, I've been able to see that, not everybody makes movies like the Americans do. And that's okay because people have different desires and interests. So anyway, but I'll talk about that maybe during the climax. We'll get into the, some movie reviews perhaps, because like I said, now it's time for the science and the tech. Okay. So while my inner supervillain was coming out and has been coming out whenever I'm alone, I just start yelling out like the stuff from Tyrants, galactic or ancient or otherwise. And, yes. So if you heard at the beginning of the episode, we're going to get into this. Okay. That was a clip from Harlan Ellison's Watching, which used to be like this, usually 2, 3, 4 minutes, that would get played every Sunday on Sci-Fi Buzz and the Sci-Fi Channel back in the mid 90s. Harlan Ellison, of course, one of the greatest authors of all time. And what he was talking about will be relevant because for our main story, we absolutely are going to get into NASA's announcement this week of finding exoplanets. And, we'll break into that when we get there. But for right now, let's get into the foreplay because there's been a whole ton of shit that's been going on this week. And I mean a whole ton of shit that has been going on. A lot of security concerns that have really been overblown. And oh man, do I get annoyed by this. We talked about it a couple episodes ago. It was episode 211, which we're in episode 214. Geez. Or Satan. In episode 211, we talked about internet self-defense. Okay. And that is take the time, breathe a little bit. When you hear some outrageous story happen, slow it down quite a bit. Okay. Slow it down because, and find out what's actually going on. One that came out this week was actually just maybe like a day ago, was Cloudflare, which Cloudflare offers a bunch of different services. It's probably best or most used for being a reverse proxy, which can help with web traffic and with, security of a website because, well, anyway, I'd have to break down into what exactly a reverse proxy is, but it's a very handy thing. Cloudflare offers a tremendous service, for the internet. And what happened this week, they're calling it Cloud Bleed. Okay, and Cloud Bleed it wasn't exactly a hack. It was a memory leak. Okay, that's all it was a memory leak. And it was a problem. It was really a flaw just in the coding for Cloudflare itself. Okay, so there's a memory leak on a server. Problem is that this memory leak ended up getting cataloged by all of the different search engines out there. And with this memory leak, a lot of people's credentials, login information for various sites and services and everything became part of the leak. And, theoretically, you could do a Google search. And this was between the 14th and the 18th of February that this was occurring of this year, of 2017 HE. And, you could look up somebody's, name and an account, and potentially there was a chance that it would show up, and you would have somebody's, password, and you could, if you wanted to do something malicious, obviously you could. That's the basic, breakdown of this. Now, Cloudflare was very quick to react to this. All of these search engines, Google, whoever else, were also very quick to remove this information from the search engines. Okay. And as far as we know, it was an incredibly small percentage, and I mean incredibly small percentage of websites and services that this exactly, affected. Now, the recommendation right out of the gate is, go ahead and, if you want to be really certain about things, change your password on everything. Okay. The problem is, admittedly, it's a pain in the ass. Like some people, you have so many accounts, right? How much shit, do you need to change? Like this is, it is a real process now, to just go, you can't just change your password. It's a real process now to go and do that. Some people would say that what happened with Cloudflare, with Cloudbleed here, that actually, if you were using, say, Facebook's login, they're kind of their OAuth implementation. It's not exactly OAuth, but where, log in with Facebook and all this, that this would have prevented, any potential, malicious action against you, say by a bad actor, due to the memory leak from Cloudbleed, okay, of Cloudflare. And, there's some truth to that. It's true. But two things, and I'm going to give you the list of the main sites that were, that at least it's a little more certain that they were affected by it. One of them actually is very concerning, but the bulk of them maybe not so much. So, but one thing I'm going to say, here is that this speaks to, I talk about this, and I never really came up with a term exactly, but I usually bundle it in with, going with software minimalism, meaning you only use the software that you really need and don't go installing every goddamn thing on your, device, on your PC or phone or whatever. But account minimalism, as in having as few accounts as possible, is such a great thing. And this is one of those cases, where it really shows why. Because, Cloudflare, so many websites use Cloudflare for so many different services, not just reverse proxy, that, when it's just, one other, there's just one little memory leak somewhere, it can affect, it can have widespread effects. Okay. Even though, again, I think people were a little more scared than they needed to be about this. And kudos to Cloudflare, and the search engines. They did a turnaround on this really, really fast. So anyway, let's get into the websites that were, potentially, not potentially, but that were an issue, that if you're at least running on one of these, you do want to go change your password for it. And I'm going to save a big one for the end. Okay. But patreon.com is one of them. So if you're a Sovryn Tech patron, like we were mentioning, you want to go change your password. Medium.com. A lot of people have Medium accounts. You're going to want to change that. 4chan. Ooh. Yelp, Zendesk, Uber, Pirate Bay. Pastebin.com, discordapp.com. Discord's very popular. I use it too, very popular gaming chat platform. Change.org, Feedly.com, Crunchyroll.com, hardsextube.com. I didn't know about that one. Really, I didn't. Nationalreview.com, Petapixel.com, PUU.sh. I don't know what push is. Putlocker.ws and tineye.com. So those are the ones. If you're on any of those, you want to get your password changed on that right away. Now, the one that I didn't mention that I'm going to mention now is Authy. Authy, okay, as in the two-step authenticator. Now, this has this is kind of a broader subject. We've got more to get into, during the foreplay. So anyway, Authy is the very popular next to Google Authenticator. It is probably the most popular two-factor authenticator or authentication app out there. And this, the Cloudflare thing created a problem. So, created a potential leak of, and this is what's ironic, right? Is because Authy is a two-step authenticator service, but because you have an account with it and it gets stored in the cloud, somebody could have access to, to your two-step authenticator tokens. This is the problem with having, there's the convenience with Authy. The reason Authy is so popular is because you don't have to go through, say you get a new phone, or even if you want to, because there's a Chrome extension for it, you want to, see it on your PC, you want your tokens on your PC and everything. Because it's cloud-based, granted it gets encrypted, but again, if people get the passwords, who cares if it's encrypted? It's really convenient. But then you run into the problem that when something like this happens, like Cloud Bleed, oh shit, there goes, somebody has access to all your, all your two-factor authentication tokens. Two-factor is meaningless at that point. So this is pretty damning of Authy. This is a very serious concern. Thankfully, Cloudflare has been really open about what exactly happened, what potential websites were affected. And again, it's potential, okay? So Authy could have been pretty serious. I don't necessarily recommend Authy. I recommend Google Authenticator or, one of those. Authy is, well, they make their money off of doing this effectively. So, there's some advantage to that, I guess. But anyway, it just speaks to the fact of, what happens when you store shit in the cloud. This is what can happen, even when it's, something like, two-factor authentication. It could be it can be a real concern. So if you want to stop using Authy after this, yep, I don't think that's a bad piece of advice at all. If you want to continue using it, well, again, just make sure, that you're constantly cycling, your password. Is this kind of memory leak ever going to happen again? You never know. It was a problem of faulty code, is as best as has been, laid out there as far as, what exactly, went down. So, but understand that still, while yes, okay, so millions of people use these websites, right, that I listed off. But as far as the amount of websites that it actually affected is very minimal. Okay, so it's not the end of the world, right? It's really not the end of the world. People were making it to be a far bigger deal than it is. Yeah, it's a good idea to change your passwords, but again, I want to be empathetic and understand and, and appreciate that. Look, a lot of people have a lot of accounts and a lot of passwords, and it's not so easy to just go and, change all of them, which also speaks to maybe why you want to use a password manager. Ironically, this will lead into the second part. I could have done all of this for HackSec, and maybe I should have, but I have a different subject I want to, break into at least briefly during HackSec and give it the full attention that it deserves. SHA-1 was also proven. That's SHA-1, of course. SHA-1 was proven to be crackable by Google just this past week. Now, this and what it's through a collision. We don't have to get into all the particulars of it, okay? But there's a couple things that I want to make clear. So SHA-1, is an encryption scheme. It's been broken. Here's the thing. Almost nothing uses SHA-1 anymore. The things that still use SHA-1, most of them, like say that have any level of popularity, usually don't use it in an area where your data could be potentially acquired or broken into, okay, or exploited. So this is another one where it's like, yeah, it's scary, but it's not. Like, and also because for probably over a decade, people have known through the very method that Google did, through collision, that you could, that this could be done. That SHA-1 could get broken. That's why nobody's really using it anymore, because they already knew theoretically that it was possible. It just ended up actually happening. Now, one of the services that apparently it could have affected, I had some people ask me, some very intelligent people ask me, hey, what about Telegram? I know Telegram uses SHA-1 to some degree. Was that a problem? Did all of my little messages on Telegram, were they potentially cracked into, or could they be cracked into, due to this because Google found out that SHA-1 sucks? No, not really, because the way that Telegram has SHA-1 implemented, it doesn't touch really the encrypted areas of what's going on. Okay, so that's what I was saying earlier, that, okay, SHA-1's cracked, but most of the things that still use SHA-1 don't really use it in a way that has access to anything that matters. Okay, so the SHA-1 crack also, not really a big deal. And as far as Telegram goes, I say it a million times, I'll say it again. If it's something that really fucking matters, okay, like, you're doing some free market, kind of situation or something, don't use Telegram for that. Okay. Telegram is great because it's an entire alternative platform with a lot of great options. And they've done a lot of updates recently too. They finally have a dark theme on that shit. Holy cow. Thank you. Don't use it for when it matters. You stick to Signal when you need to do something that matters, or a really good PGP email implementation, right? Do not rely on Telegram for that level of concern. The secret chats are pretty good with Telegram, but even that, there's so many concerns, to be had, and that a lot of great researchers have brought up. Really, if you can be on Signal, if you have that option, do that. Not to say, look, there's advantages. There's just think of Telegram as a platform. There it is. I'm done talking about it. So the SHA-1 thing, not a huge deal, because nobody's really using it anymore. And those that do, they use it in very specific areas where it's not that much of a concern. And with, Cloud Bleed, yep, change your passwords, particularly the ones for the websites that I mentioned. But anyway, this has already been licked, and kudos for them being so fast about it. Let's shift gears away from, well, this is kind of Google related in that it has to do with the Chrome extension. Firefox 57. So this is a version that will not be coming out until later this year, in 2017 HE. I love saying that. If you haven't heard our episode on the Holocene calendar, well, anyway, check it out on Wikipedia or something. Look up the Holocene calendar. With Firefox 57, now this is something we've been following for literal years, and I was asking, when the hell is this going to happen? When the hell is Firefox going to implement this? Because they announced it probably 3 years ago now, that they were going to create I think at the time they were saying it was going to be a compatibility layer to where Firefox could run Chrome extensions. Now we're finding out kind of the ugly details of this, because I had been saying for years, it's like, where the hell is this? Can we start using the Signal desktop app on Firefox already? And the ugly detail that we're finding out with this is that it's not just a compatibility layer. They are absolutely changing the very nature of Firefox extensions entirely. Now maybe I missed this years ago when they first announced this, but I don't recall it saying that exactly. But it's not going to be able, any add-on for Firefox right now is going to be dead and buried come Firefox 57. It will not work for it. Now it'll work for Firefox. They'll still work for Firefox alternatives, like say Pale Moon. But it's going to be November 14th this year, that all of those add-ons will no longer function for you. So, no script, even the advanced features that uBlock Origin has within Firefox, all of this different stuff will stop working come November 14th, unless they convert. NoScript doesn't exist. There's alternatives on Chrome, but, there isn't, NoScript never made anything for Chrome. They just stick in Firefox. Unless a lot of these Firefox only extensions that you like, if they don't convert to the Chrome extension code, they won't work with Firefox anymore. Now, I think that's kind of shitty. Firefox is really going in a direction, Like, this is a web browser that is changing a lot. Now, I get it. They don't have market share. They're trying to figure out how to get market share. They have their, their Project Quantum or whatever, where they're baking in, this much faster, rendering engine. They've also gone to where, they're going to a multi-process architecture for tabs, which I disagreed with. I didn't like that. We talked about that at length on Sovryn Tech in the past. And now they're just like, well, fuck it. Everybody's going to have to work on this, this Chrome extension base. And that's now, I mean, it's not like it's going to be the Chrome web store. You're going to have a Mozilla add-on store effectively, but all those ones that you've been using for years are going to have to convert into Chrome extensions or, extensions that match the Chrome code, to work within, Firefox. I mean, there's a good thing to this because again, things like say the Signal app for desktop that only existed for Chrome or Chrome derivatives can now work in Firefox. There's lots of Chrome extensions that could now work in Firefox. Perhaps, but here's the thing is it going to, and this wasn't exactly clear, is it going to allow for Chrome apps to work? Because also I think this year, or maybe it's 2018, where Chrome apps will no longer work on Windows machines. The only way you can use Chrome apps is if you have a Chromebook. It won't work on any other platform. So this might be an opportunity for people to jump on, to make apps for Firefox, which Firefox has been trying to build its own app store as well. They haven't gone anywhere and they haven't done well. But if you can just port a lot of these Chrome apps, not extensions, but actual apps, into Firefox, well, all of those might have a new lease on life. So it could be interesting, but I'll admit, I don't like the direction Firefox is going. They're pretty much just turning into Chrome. And then it's like, well, why even use Firefox? I guess because it's completely open source, sure. And, maybe with Project Quantum, I'm pretty sure it has another name and it begins with an S and I'm forgetting it at the moment. But, its rendering engine might end up being better. There might be some other interesting things going on, but I don't know, a lot of the problems, that I have with Chrome, Firefox is now making them a feature. So whatever. Anyway, just thought I'd let you know about that. I know I have a lot of Firefox users and good for you. Now speaking of something dying, and this one won't shock anybody, but I was even in awe at the speed at which this happened. Google Spaces, which we talked about Spaces when it came out, and this was just 9 months ago. It was announced at Google I/O, just last year's Google I/O, and this is supposed to be such a big deal. This is supposed to be like kind of a group chat feature with Google Spaces. They're already shutting it down. I think the official April 17th is the official date this year for when it'll finally be, I guess on March 3rd, so in just about a week, on March 3rd, it'll become read-only, so you won't be able to use it anymore. But on April 17th, they're going to kill the service. Can Google... There's nothing wrong, okay, with a company wanting to shut something down. That's fine. And honestly, if they don't want to open it up and, do the proper end-of-life thing, they don't have to do that either. I get that. Here's the problem, is that when this was announced, you go back and watch just last year's. We haven't even had Google I/O 2017 yet, okay? Watch last year's Google I/O and listen to them how, holy shit, Google Spaces is going to change the way we work. It's going to change the world. I mean, they're touting it to you like it's the second coming of Christ, okay? And this is what they do with all of their products, and then they fucking shut them down. This is why I say I wouldn't rely on a third party for the fucking life of me for just about anything. Or if I did, I'd always have a backup. And I hope people had a fucking backup. I mean, it's not a surprise. Nobody was using Spaces. Even though I get it, I think that kind of product has a need, has a niche because, people are grouping up a lot more. I mean, what's the biggest thing on Facebook right now? Facebook groups, right? So I understand that, why it came into existence, but there's no network effect. Nobody's going to touch it. And honestly, anytime Google gets into social, I think people still, they're held up by the stigma of Google Plus, or they're held up by the stigma of all the different products they used to have. And then they were supposed to break it up, bake it all down into one, right? This is back in 2013, when everything was supposed to be part of Project Babel and everything was going to get baked into Hangouts and all shit. That didn't happen. And now we're back, then we end up getting back to where Google has Allo and all, and Duo and Google Voice is back now. We talked about that recently. And then you have Hangouts. Then you have this. I mean, and it's like, can Google make up their fucking mind about anything? I wouldn't it's a miracle that Gmail is still a thing. It really is. I don't know. I can't believe, how is Google Plus still a thing and Google Spaces gets canned? Come on. Maybe it's like Orkut, right? Orkut lasted for, 20 years. Not really. But you know what I mean? Oh, these guys, they drive me nuts because of the way that the PR campaigns they put around this shit. And then, just come out and say it's an experiment. We're experimenting with how would you like to, try group chats. And then I probably wouldn't get so mad. I mean, it's Alphabet/Google, so it pisses me off. But then I probably wouldn't be so mad because it's like, okay, well, at least you didn't try to tell me that this was going to change my fucking life, and everything about it. And suddenly, I'm going to have all this free time to read or something if I just use Google Spaces, and then you pull out the rug from underneath. Such shit. I mean, and there was conversations of people, wanting me to open up, like, oh, could you make a Sovryn Tech Google Spaces or something? And I was like, no, I don't trust the service. I don't. If people want to do this sort of thing, like run with Trello or something, and now, Trello is, of course, ended up getting bought out, but the business is doing great. God damn it, Google. You'll kill everything and anything. And I don't know how metaphorical I'm being. Anyway, so Google Spaces, that's going to be dead and buried. I hope you weren't using it. All right, now let's start getting into our lead story. And before I do, I want to mention this is kind of cool, and you want to talk about something that pisses me off. Well, at the same time, it pisses me off. I'll play it straight with you about this. So this week, okay, like I said, we're going to talk about the exoplanets in a minute. But before we do that, there was also and I think this is actually pretty cool, and I'll explain what pisses me off about it though. The website is zooniverse.org. Okay, now I put a more direct link in the show notes. It's in the appendix for episode 214. Just go to sovereigntech.com if you want to see those show notes, or it's in your podcast app. And what is going on is that they are crowdsourcing effectively on the webs for people to, and this is whatever, the IAU, all those different organizations, astronomical organizations that do this. They are crowdsourcing the search for Planet 9, okay, which, in my opinion, Pluto should still be Planet 9, and really we should be talking about Planet X. And I think the whole reason that they dumped Planet, not to get, all right, I'm going to get conspiratorial on you, and this isn't what pisses me off, but I think the reason Pluto was, kind of taken off the books, as it were, is because NASA found out that, or, figured out that, oh, hey, there might actually be like a 10th planet in our solar system. It's just really far out there. Okay. And they didn't want all of these books about Planet X, which means Planet 10, to somehow get any kind of legitimacy. I really think that that's what happened. Just saying. That's my opinion. I don't have any, I'm speculating, and I'm very clear that I'm speculating, but in my opinion, I think that that's what went down. So anyway, saying that, now there's this real search for, a Planet 9 or a Planet X, depending on how you feel about Pluto, because it would suddenly make a lot of things that happen in the solar system make a lot of sense. So I put a link in the show notes, and what this website does is it's just a bunch of different pictures, and they show you kind of what to look for and to analyze in these pictures, and you can go through it yourself. And they're allowing really amateur anything, it's not just amateur astronomers, to help in the hunt for Planet 9. And I think that's really cool. That's why I put the link in the show notes, because I think I can think of far worse things to do with one's time. So I think that's awesome. But here's my problem with all this, and it's kind of related to the fact of, they're trying to, like I said, that I think they knew there's a Planet 9 out there. They knew there's a body, and I think the theory goes is it's probably about the size of Neptune. Okay, so it is a planet, by their metrics. It's not a dwarf planet. But there have been so many books that have talked about a Planet X, right? I mean, it's been a trope in science fiction for so long. And I know, Harlan, at that clip at the beginning of this episode of Sovryn Tech, we played the clip where he's like, yeah, science fiction, just because there's so many authors, sure, every once in a while, somebody's going to get something right. But here's the thing with Planet X, and this wasn't necessarily science fiction. This was also, lots of very serious researchers, were theorizing this. Those serious researchers were laughed at. We're told they weren't just told they were wrong. They were told, no, it's impossible for a planet of that size to, to be doing the rounds in our solar system. They were told it was impossible. And now, fuck, you can go help them find this goddamn thing. And I just think it's really insulting because the scientific community, the bunch of fucking bullies that they can be, not always, but that they can be, no apologies whatsoever to, say, like Immanuel Velikovsky, no apologies to Zecharia Sitchin, who I had the great pleasure of knowing, who wrote, like, The 12th Planet, and, did so much research. And understand, he wasn't basing it off of, he was basing it off of historical data. That there's all these different legends and things. Look into Zecharia Sitchin. It's crazy how many times #Sitchin was right. And these guys will never get the recognition. They'll never get the time of day for saying, no, we know that there was some kind of planetoid that was playing galactic billiards in this fucking solar system. And it's the only thing that really fits the, all the different aspects of evidence, not just the physics of it all, but also, based upon what could be considered maybe not eyewitness account, but some degree of historical accounting. So that's what pisses me off about it, is that now, looking for a 9th planet or a 10th planet, depending on how you're counting. Oh, that's order of the day now, as to where just 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, okay, it was considered impossible. You understand? So anyway, that's what ticks me off about it. Now, what I'm going to tell you, I'm going to bite back at these fucking scientists at fucking NASA, because this week they made a big announcement. I think it was like on Monday. Okay. And again, this is being recorded on February 25th. They made they made this deal. It's like, oh yeah, we have a huge announcement. Okay. Coming on Monday, and it's going to be about, extrasolar something outside of our solar system. And, they've done this before recently. Like they did the big thing. We have a huge reveal about Mars, and they held this big press conference. And we talked about this one on Sovryn Tech as well. This is probably a year, maybe 2 years ago, where they said that, and the announcement that they gave was, we have proof that there's water on Mars. They already told us there was water on Mars. They told us that in the fucking 90s. It was a goddamn PR stunt. And so they held this. They said, "Oh, Wednesday we have a huge announcement to make." Blah 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 blah. And they and all the different Gizmodo, all these stupid other fucking websites, all played into it. They're probably paid to do marketing, for it, saying, "Oh, get ready. What's this going to be all about? Oh, NASA, those gods are going to tell us something." Oh, and the announcement came out, and actually, well, I'll tell you what. How about I just play the audio for you, and then we'll break down what exactly the announcement was. Even though I already hinted at it, like I said, it's going to be about exoplanets. But here, you can take it right from the diviners' mouths, at NASA.
I'm excited to announce today that Dr. Michael Guillon and his team have used our Spitzer Space Telescope to determine that there are actually 7 Earth-sized planets orbiting the nearby TRAPPIST-1 star about 40 light years away. What's more, as you can see in this illustration, is that 3 of these planets, marked in green, are in the habitable zone, where liquid water can pool on the surface. In fact, with the right atmospheric conditions, there could be water on any of these planets. So for the first time, we found as many terrestrial planets around a single star, and that's the first time we have been able to measure, in addition to that, both the masses and the radii of these habitable zone type Earth-sized planets. These planets are among the best of all the planets we know to follow up, to see, for example, with the James Webb Space Telescope that we're going to launch last year, the atmospheres, and also to look at biosignatures if there are any. The discovery gives us a hint that finding a second Earth is not just a matter of if, but when.
Okay, So now I put a link in the show notes. You can watch the entire 40-minute press conference if you wish, because they do field some questions. It was all, from NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C. Yeah, you probably didn't know that. That's where that's headquartered. Or maybe you knew that. I'm sorry. I have a very smart audience. This doesn't excite me at all. It really doesn't excite me at all. And in fact, we could find out, here's the thing. We could find out in another year or two that they were dead wrong, that they were just wrong. Like that, they could put up again, they already mentioned that they're putting up a new satellite, next year. A new space telescope effectively that, we'll be able to tell them more information and everything. They might find out that they were off base, that they were wrong, because they have been, and I've talked about this before on Sovryn Tech, but I want to reiterate it now because everybody's so gaga and, fucking, woo, we found a second Earth. Oh, we can finally leave this place. And please, I don't want to be here either. Okay. I am more than ready to head out into the solar system. Okay. But we need to have some reality checks here. All right. So there have been announcements over the years. Again, that's why this is the same shit like with the water on Mars. Okay, where look, you already told us this. What the fuck? What? Now you have some kind of 100% certainty or something? No, the Mars. I even said it back when we covered it on Sovryn Tech. Okay, so actually now I remember when they did announce it. They announced it just before the movie The Martian came out, which is a fine movie. Understand that, but I really think, and this speaks to what Harlan Ellison was talking about at the very beginning of this episode. I really think that whole announcement about water on Mars was a fucking marketing ploy, okay, by Hollywood, really. It was corporatism, because NASA's a government agency, so that makes it corporatism, corporations and governments working together, okay? That was marketing. That was fucking marketing. Just like, what was Harlan talking about? Last Action Hero, where they spent $500,000. Who was it, Columbia? Columbia Pictures spent $500,000 on putting Last Action Hero on a fucking rocket. And if you ever read the history of that rocket, the rocket didn't even take off till July. It totally flopped. Personally, I think Last Action Hero is a fine movie. I enjoy it, and the soundtrack's fucking amazing. The soundtrack is really great. There's an AC/DC song on there that you can only get on there. Was it Big Stuff? Or Big One, or whatever. Anyway, great soundtrack. And a movie that I actually enjoy. I quote it often. I really think it's good. But I think that's marketing. Now, that's with the Martian thing. What exactly is this marketing for? I am not 100% sure, but something about this doesn't feel right. And as soon as I knew they were talking about extrasolar shit, I was like, no. And as soon as they're trying to make it this big announcement, I'm like, no. There's some other kind of crap going on here. Now let's talk a little bit about this whole exoplanet thing. Can really think about it. Okay. Use the long-term memory and think about how many times you've seen either on your Facebook feed or whatever, you've seen a story come across that said, oh, NASA scientists think they found another Earth. It happens all the time, sometimes 2-3 times a year, that they've been saying this, that they find one. What makes this announcement such a big deal? And to make it worse, a lot of the ones, and we've covered this before, a lot of these exoplanets that NASA announces, sometimes 1 to 4 years later, you find out that they were wrong, and they take it off of the exoplanet list. There's tons of these that happens with. Tons. We could find out, so they announced that it's 7 planets, 3 of which are exactly within the Goldilocks zone. Okay, so the Goldilocks zone is that perfect spot within a solar system. Okay, like Earth is within the Goldilocks zone, right? That perfect spot to where it allows for water to be there, thus the building blocks of life and all this shit. Okay, so 3 of them are there, and if the atmosphere, like the guy said, if the atmospheric conditions are right, it actually could be 7 planets within this solar system, could have water on them and could be, a second Earth, as it were. Now, you can say that the way that the way that they gauged whether or not these are exoplanets, might, that might not be in so much question as perhaps previous exoplanets, but I am not convinced of that. And like I said, we could find out when they put up that, that next little space telescope up next year, okay, that they were wrong. And then this, this announcement could effectively mean nothing. I mean, yeah, it's a good bet. Okay, fine. I'm open to this. It's a good bet that in the TRAPPIST-1 star system, that one of those 7 is actually, good enough to say potentially have water on it. Potentially. Understand that too. They're not saying they know that there's water on there, like they said with Mars, and which really they had said long before. But there's the potential. I'm not saying don't get excited about that. I mean, I understand why people do, but at the same time, folks, you don't know. I mean, you really don't know. And in fact, it should really, why people should really keep their expectations in check, especially if, like, let's say somehow that, well, actually, NASA didn't, and I know they did, but let's say that they didn't tell you before their big announcement back when The Martian came out that there was water on Mars, that they knew it. Okay, let's say they didn't tell you. So they just now found out that there was water on Mars. How the hell long do you think it'd take them to find out if there's actually water on one of those other exoplanets, that's 40 million light years away? They're never going to find out. Like, what do you think you're going to do with this information? There's this whole announcement. This is some kind of marketing. I don't exactly know what for, but there is some kind of marketing going on here. And I don't buy it. Like I said, I expect within the next couple of years to find out that at least some of these planets, if not all, get taken off of, because they have a whole list of all the exoplanets that are potentially a second Earth. And I mean, almost by the day, planets get taken off of that list because they find out that they were wrong. And I just can't wait, really to find out that, well, that they were wrong about this one too. I don't get it. Like, is this somehow like, I mean, I'm open to this. Maybe NASA was scared to death that President Trump was worried, okay, or maybe they're worried that Trump was going to take away from funding from NASA or something, which wouldn't surprise me, okay, and so they're like, oh, we got to prove that we're actually doing something here. Oh shit, look at what we found in TRAPPIST-1. Like maybe that's what's going on, but they play with people, like it just annoys the fuck out of me because they really don't have enough evidence. I don't think that they have. That they can really safely make the claim that it's not a matter of if we're going to find a second Earth. Now it's a matter of when. I don't buy into that because, again, they're just saying, yeah, it's in the Goldilocks zone, so it could have water, but that doesn't mean that it does. And even then, okay, this is more of the reality check, folks, please. Even then, let's say it had water. There's no guarantee that there's life on there, and there's sure as hell no guarantee that there's intelligent, that there's sapient life there, life like human beings. I say this all the time, but I got to keep repeating it because nobody else fucking says it. Nobody else is willing to, to admit it. And that is, look, I am open to that there could be tons. Because it's a big universe. Yes, there's probably some form of animal life, some form of life out there. Okay. But as far as life like human beings, life that can act outside of instinct, what they call sapient life? No, I think the math of what it takes for that kind of level of consciousness, for consciousness to come into being. Forget about evolution and all this shit. Well, I mean, yeah, it's evolution, I know, but, just what it takes for consciousness to come in, to be a thing. And again, to be able, consciousness as in being able to act outside of, kind of your biologically programmed instincts or something. The math is astronomical for that to occur. Astronomical. It's beyond astronomical, in my opinion. I don't get it. I don't understand. It's all PR. That's what drives me nuts with so many things. It happens in the tech world a lot. So we were just talking about, like, with Google Spaces, where, this is going to change the world, then they end up canceling it. And it happens a lot in the science community, to where there's just this constant PR of, get excited, everybody, get excited. And nothing ever comes out of this shit. I mean, you think of all the different sites like phys.org and some others where they're announcing stuff by the day, or even space.com that's announcing stuff by the day. And while, yeah, there's always new information coming in and tidbits, certainly that you could talk about, as far as things that are headline worthy, maybe once in every 5-10 years. If you've heard me talk about this before, I apologize, but it needs to be said again. Okay, most of the news that comes out has absolutely no meaning. It's often just theoretical, and it's not going to announce the shit when it means something to me, right? Like finding a second Earth out there when you know it's a second Earth, a real second Earth. You tell me about it. Otherwise, I'm just expecting it to be another planet taking off of your fucking exoplanet list. You understand? If you want to get people excited, get them excited about something that actually means shit to their lives. And in my opinion, this is not one of those. This is some kind of marketing for something. And believe me, I'm going to be keeping my eyes out for this. I mean, is it because of the Trump thing, like I said? Is it because to get people excited, is this like something that Bezos or Elon Musk did to get you excited about, Blue Origin or SpaceX or something like, oh yeah, we got to get into space, because there's second Earths out there and we need to get to those. So please, get excited about the space program, blah, blah, blah. Maybe that's what it's about. I mean, interestingly, NASA is testing out, and in fact, this is going to be a manned mission that's going to do a whip around the dark side of the moon, actually, which I'm impressed. I mean, that's going to be the furthest out that humans have been in a good long while. They're testing out their Orion, the entire constellation program, I should say, what's called Constellation, but they're testing out, the new modules. I think it's the Orion module, right? And it's going to be a manned mission that's going to end up whipping around the moon. That's coming up in 2-3 years, I think. Maybe even less, if I remember correctly. So I don't know. I feel like this is all it's a fucking PR stunt, and I don't get excited about PR stunts. I get pissed off about them. So keep this in mind. Yeah, I mean, maybe it's to get people excited for that because we're going to end up returning to the stars. Look, I want humans to get to the stars. I am ready to colonize. Okay, I'm ready to colonize this solar system, and I don't think we're ever going to go beyond it as humans. Look, I'm sorry, and I've been saying that forever on Sovryn Tech. I just don't think so. Okay, there are laws of physics that you don't break. Yes, I'm aware of redshifting. Okay. Oh, but we've only recently discovered these laws of physics. We're just getting off from the horse and buggy. We shouldn't really be saying how things fly. No, look. As long as you accept, and I do, as long as you accept that we landed on the moon, the reason we landed on the moon is because we have a pretty good fucking grasp of the laws of physics. That's how we were able to do it as human beings. Okay, so I don't buy this argument that, we've only, this kind of technology has only been a part of our lives for so long, so, who knows? Yeah, okay, that's nice. Hey, I want my Star Trek future too, baby. Believe me, I want all this stuff. Believe me, I want it to be real. I'd love to go to other, I'd love to go to other solar systems. I would love to, hell, let's go all the way. Let's do, 26th century Enterprise J, baby, right? And, let's go to other galaxies. I'm so game. I'm so ready for that. I've been wanting it my whole life. All right. But the reality is this shit ain't likely to happen. The reality is it's unlikely that sapient life is going to form, in any part of the universe. And certainly, even close to us, to where it matters. Yeah, that's right, folks. I don't buy that aliens have been to Earth or that they're, the UFOs are doing any kind of bullshit like that. I don't buy it. So, I mean, and then, honestly, like there's even huge ethical questions about this. Because, well, let's say, all right, for playing devil's advocate or whatever, let's say TRAPPIST-1, let's say one of those 7 planets, even if it's more, let's say one of those 7 planets is actually a second Earth. Is it okay for humanity, say to show up at the doorstep of one of these planets of TRAPPIST-1 and then just even just step on it and start setting it up on its own? What if there's no other sapient life on there? Okay, but there's some kind of animal life, right? Is it all right for humans to land and start colonizing and all this stuff? Because imagine this. Imagine a few million years ago. Say an alien species, again, I don't think this happened at all. I don't think aliens have ever been to our solar system. I'm not saying there aren't aliens. I'm just saying that they're exceptionally rare, despite what the Drake equation would tell you. Okay, say some aliens landed here, a few million years ago, and they stepped just a little too often on the fish that would eventually become, human beings. We wouldn't be here. There's something to be said for allowing, for allowing nature to take its course. And I'm not going to pretend to have the answers to this. I'm not going to, I'm not going to preach on it. All right. I'm not going to get hot and bothered and passionate. I'm just putting it out there. Like, who knows what you stepping on this other planet, could potentially cause. I mean, if it's some lifeless rock, like Ceres, or even, say a moon of, get into Europa and Enceladus. And I mean, that's a different story. But, landing on some of these other planets, like what if you fuck with the evolution of something that could eventually become a sapient life form? I mean, these are ethical questions to ask, because just like you wouldn't beat a child until, it grew up dumb, or at least I hope you wouldn't, do you end up doing that for something else that could potentially become sapient in who knows how long? I don't know. I mean, these are big questions that, the ethics of this stuff, of even going to these other worlds. Let's say I bought everything that NASA was fucking selling, and obviously I don't. Okay. Even the ethics of doing that, you got to wonder. Something I enjoyed. We already mentioned some Star Trek, and that's an old Sovereign Tech tradition to bring up some Star Trek. And look, I get it. It's fiction. Okay. Yep. It's fiction. There we go. Okay. All right. You over that now? Okay. So let's say that, or something that I loved, I should say, in Star Trek Beyond, which was the last Star Trek movie that came out, was that Yorktown Station, or Yorktown Base, whatever they, which had a bunch of different names in the movie. But that space station, Yorktown, that, like, what, and Spock kind of hints at it in the movie. He says where he didn't want to show geographical favoritism on another planet, by having the base on a planet, because McCoy says, how come this can't be on another planet? And I really liked kind of the sensibility that they had. And this is popular in another novel series of science fiction called The Culture series by Ian M. Banks. And where like, once a certain species, like say humans or something else, gets to a certain level of intelligence and technological ability, like they stop fucking with other planets, and they just end up kind of living in space on like space stations or something, and I appreciated that. Like, no, we're not going to, even if we're not going to build this on some other world where we could potentially influence the culture, or we could, cause all kinds of problems there, or, who knows what kind of evolutionary turns that we would cause, etc. And we'll just build it here, and that'll be the end of it. And then we're not bothering anybody, and we go about living our happy-go-lucky lives, which, boy, life on Yorktown Station looked fucking phenomenal. I am totally up for that. So, yeah, I appreciated that. Like, I mean, that's really something to consider. Like what paths of life are I mean, do you have to care? No, I suppose caring about it would kind of be a spook, as Max Stirner would say, but wouldn't you want the same, chance to evolve into human beings? I mean, I'm so glad that human beings are a thing. Some of us, I'm glad that we're a thing, but you take my meaning. So I get worried. I mean, it's all this, it's all PR. Anytime I hear this conversation about exoplanets, the ethics around it never come up. They just never, even what it would take to travel. We've covered that on Sovereign Tech. Like, how dare you raise children with the sole purpose of completing some fucking mission that they didn't choose, by going on some multi-generational ship to these planets or something. We've already talked about that many times on Sovereign Tech. Yeah, there's huge ethical questions around all this that should not be exciting. They should be, stepped on, or not stepped on. They should be tread upon with absolute caution, because you are walking on eggshells. So yeah, no excitement for me about this exoplanet announcement. I'd be just as, well, like I said, I'm expecting them to end up getting erased effectively, from the exoplanet record. And then, but most people, they won't even remember that NASA had this announcement, in like, probably 5 more minutes, they'll totally forget about it. Woo! All right, but you want to talk about something that you won't forget about in 5 minutes. Something that you could hold in your hand that can last a lifetime with you and beyond. Gold and silver, baby. I'm telling you. You want to get your hands on some precious metals because you want to diversify your holdings on all kinds of things, right? And hey, who knows? There might not be gold, silver, platinum, palladium, and all this stuff on other planets, out there, right? That might be a very unique thing. And hey, the more planets you discover, these things might become incredibly more precious. Ooh. So if you want to get your hands on it, though, I want you to go to Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. Okay. The website, gold.zog.ninja. You can buy all this different, whatever you want, coins, but whatever. And again, gold, silver, platinum, palladium, you can buy it with Bitcoin. Talk about being a part of the future. That's the real shit right there. So Robertson Roberts Brokerage, I want you to go to gold.zog.ninja, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. And woo, how about we get back to the show? Oh, look at that. We're back already. All right, so it is time for HackSec, which is the segment of the show where we talk everything hacking and security. And, of course, on this show, hackers are heroes. And this week, I get the great pleasure of reporting about what I consider to be absolute heroes. Now, this is going to be a follow-up to a story that we really briefly covered. This would have been a few months ago, maybe in August of 2016 HE. And what I said in August, or what had happened in August, is that there were an odd tweet went out, and there was the theory, or not theory, it was known that the FBI, the U.S. government was going after RiseUp.net. Now, for those that don't know what RiseUp.net is, RiseUp.net is a absolutely anarchist activist run. Okay, red and black, I grant you. But anarchist activist run web service. I mean, I don't want to say company, but just web service. They offer VPN, they offer email, they offer all kinds of different things. And of course, they accept donations in Bitcoin. They're right on board. I have been a user of RiseUp.net for longer than I can remember. I know lots of other people that also use RiseUp.net. I got them on it, and it is a fantastic service and has been really the backbone, I think, for a lot of the activism that you probably don't hear about because, well, I don't know, maybe you don't listen to those sources. But for a lot of the activism that is absolutely going on long before President Trump got in office, and it was very concerning when suddenly, oh shit, we kind of had a repeat of what happened with Ladar Levinson, and Edward Snowden, where Ladar said, okay, we're going to shut down because, we're getting notes that, or, we're getting orders that we have to turn over things. So the Warren Canary is what tipped everybody off that RiseUp.net was getting, was a part of some kind of investigation and search. And a lot of people said, holy shit, delete your RiseUp.net account, blah, blah, blah. Now, myself and some others said that week, and I said it on Sovryn Tech, you can listen to it. I said, yes, there's, be aware, be a little concerned, but don't sweat it too much because there is absolutely no indication that RiseUp.net turned over anything. It's just that they were served, clearly from the Warren Canary being taken down, that they were served papers. And it now seems, that there was, and well, at the time I had said, look, they're probably under gag order. They couldn't tell you what happened. But that doesn't mean that everything was cracked into and that your encryption was, if you're using RiseUp.net, a lot of times, if you can help it, you want to be engaging with PGP anyway. Okay. And I've always said, look, the more people that use RiseUp.net, the better, because, kind of becomes a problem with the commons. It's like, okay, you want to shut down RiseUp.net? Everybody's using it. So you're just going to piss everybody off. Right. And I really do. Like, I think absolutely the people running RiseUp.net are 100% heroes, for running the service anyway. So it just came out, last week that ends up, I was right. That the gag order must have been lifted, and they came out, with a statement. This is from February 16th, 2017, saying that, nothing was really released. Well, here, I'll read it. Okay. And this is directly from their blog. Link is in the show notes if you want to read it for yourself. RiseUp moves. This is the headline. RiseUp moves to encrypted email in response to legal requests. After exhausting our legal options, RiseUp recently chose to comply with 2 sealed warrants from the FBI, rather than facing contempt of court, which would have resulted in jail time for RiseUp birds and or termination of the RiseUp organization. The first concerned the public contact address for an international DDoS extortion ring. The second concerned an account using ransomware to extort money from people. So those were the services using RiseUp.net. Well, liberty's a dangerous thing. So anyway, extortion activities clearly violate both the letter and the spirit of the social contract, which is the contract that you kind of agree to if you use RiseUp's services. And I will tell you, as I have for years when I've recommended RiseUp, the first thing they're going to say is, you don't use it for capitalism. Okay. fucking deal with that and understand what they mean by capitalism. Get over yourself. So anyway, I'll read on here. We have with our users, we have your back so long as you are not pursuing exploitative, misogynist, racist, or bigoted agendas. There was a quote unquote gag order that prevented us from disclosing even the existence of these warrants until now. This was also the reason why we could not update our canary. So that's them referencing what happened back, I believe it was August of 2016. Okay, reading on, we have taken action to ensure that RiseUp never again has access to a user's stored email in plain text. Starting today, all new RiseUp email accounts will feature personally encrypted storage on our servers, only accessible by you. In the near future, we will begin to migrate all existing accounts to use this new system. To be absolutely clear, this type of encryption is not end-to-end encryption. With RiseUp's new system, you will put faith in the server while you are logged in. For full end-to-end email encryption, as before, you must use a client that supports OpenPGP and is not web-based. We are working to roll out a more comprehensive end-to-end system in the coming year, but until that is ready, we are deploying personally encrypted storage in the meantime. In solidarity, the RiseUp birds. So this is about the best that they could do, outside of, creating like another version of LavaBit, which we talked about a few episodes ago, that had become a thing. Ladar Levinson is back in business. I already pre-ordered my account for the new LavaBit, but RiseUp is still doing a tremendous service, and they're doing this right. And there is no indication that they handed over, much of anything, or at least for, the bulk of users. Granted, I mean, and this is for you to decide. The people that were being asked about broke, RiseUp's terms of service. Feel free to, if you have an issue with RiseUp's terms of service, then don't use the fucking service. It's that simple. Okay, but here they are. They did what they did, and finally they came out and said what happened. But my point, the main thing I want to bring up here is that yes, I was absolutely right. They were just under a gag order, and they did not turn over every goddamn little thing, to the FBI. And now they are taking the best possible steps. I should say the best practical steps, not the best possible. The best practical steps to keep this from becoming a thing in the future anyway. And they're still telling you to use PGP. They're doing this right, in my opinion. Now, there's a little Q&A section. I want to read that, and I'll break down a little bit more. Here's the question. Are you compromised by law enforcement? Answer, no. We have never permitted installation of any hardware or software monitoring on any system that we control. Law enforcement has not taken our servers, does not, and has never had access to them. We would rather stop being RiseUp before we did that. Next question. Couldn't the government just make you say that? Answer, forced speech is actually quite rare in the U.S. legal context. It's usually only in cases of consumer protection where the government has been successful in compelling speech, forced cigarette warnings, etc. Nevertheless, no, they aren't forcing us to say anything. Question, let's see, why didn't, and here's the thing, the very clever wording in that answer. Nevertheless, no, they aren't forcing us to say anything. And there's no comma between the no and the they. And I think that wording, that is careful legal wording, saying that no, we really aren't. Like, because what they could do is they could almost turn that sentence into a canary if they shifted some things to where they wouldn't have to say the words anything. Okay, or they could, I mean, there's lots of little English tricks that you can do to say, oh, there might be something that they're forcing them to say. But again, I'm assuming that they're this clever. They made it, they seem to be making it very clear here that no, they're not being compelled to say anything. Next question. Why didn't you update your warrant, canary? Answer, in the winter of 2016, the canary was not updated on time. The canary was so broad that any attempt to issue a new one would be a violation of a gag order related to an investigation into a DDoS extortion ring and ransomware operation. Okay, sorry. So maybe it wasn't August. Maybe it was, I was basing it upon where I was at the time, so it was December. Anyway, let's keep going. This is not desirable because if any one of a number of minor things happen, it signals to users that a major thing has happened. So maybe they're going to use a different canary. Question, why does the new canary not mention gag orders, FISA court orders, or national security letters, etc.? Answer, our initial canary strategy was only harming users by freaking them out unnecessarily when minor events happened. A canary is supposed to signal important risk information to users, but there is also danger in signaling the wrong thing to users or leading to general fear and confusion for no good reason. The current canary is limited to significant events that could compromise the security of RiseUp users. So, in my opinion, all of that makes absolute perfect sense. Now, on my own website, zog.ninja, I have a warrant canary on there. And it is just a totally broad one, saying that if the FBI ever got in touch with me about anything, I would take it down. Okay, but I also have a lot of other warrant canaries that, this is a system that I use that signals whether or, depending on just how far these sorts of things go. Okay, and there are some people out there who know what those are, and if they hear or are missing certain audio cues or something like this, then they can warn people that something's going on, and I don't have to say anything. Okay, warrant canaries are such an important thing, and they are absolutely right in being very specific, in being very particular in what exactly, their warrant canary is supposed to mean, because it was a freak out. I guess it was in December, it was, again, winter of 2016 there. People were bugging, and I know me and some others, fortunately kept some cool heads and said, whoa. This ain't doomsday. There's not really an indication that this is a doomsday. And you don't have to assume that that the worst thing that happened did happen. It's very possible that they were just under gag order. And again, we were right. Sovryn Tech was right. Other people were right. It was a gag order, and that's why they couldn't say anything. And every indication that I'm seeing from this blog post and that I'm hearing, around is that, things are on the up and up with RiseUp, no pun intended, and, go about continuing using their service, in my opinion. But as they recommend, and I would recommend as well, if you can help it, if it's something that actually matters to where if the government really sees it, it's not just like, I don't know, a verification for, your order from the Republic of Tea or something, then, fucking get PGP on that shit. Set up Enigmail and Thunderbird and do it right. So, yeah, and there's no indication about, VPNs being any kind of issue, any of those other services. Yeah, so go right, if you're using riseup.net, in my opinion, you go right on and you keep on using it. I really don't feel like there's much to be concerned, about with this. Just make sure, that you're using it right. Or if you want to, yeah, sign up. It hasn't come out yet, but sign up for, the new LavaBit. Put a down payment on one of their accounts. And really, this is the thing with RiseUp too. I know because a lot of people say, yeah, but RiseUp's free. I want to use a free service and all this. Look, I'm just going to be, totally honest and straight with you. If you're not donating something, I don't care if it's like $5 a year. If you're not, and do it in Bitcoin, make it anonymous if you want, okay? If you're not donating something to RiseUp and you're using their shit, you're a dick. You're a fucking dick. Come on. You can't even give them $5 a year, as to where that's what LavaBit's charging, like, is it 15 a year or something like that? So please, it's wonderful. Yes. Now there are some people out there, that RiseUp is available for who they really can't afford it, or they really don't have access perhaps, to be able to send them Bitcoin or something like this. And of course they understand that. And those are like, the activists that are really knee deep in some serious shit. And, obviously I'm not talking to them and calling them dicks. Okay. But really, help this go round and round. And honestly, even if you don't use it, you give them a fucking hand. You don't even know how much they've done, to help out in certain areas. So anyway, things are looking clear, in my opinion, on the RiseUp front. If I ever end up being wrong, I will be the first one to apologize, and I will be humbled, in doing so, and I will tell you so. But anyway, that's it for HackSec this week. I'll be back with more. Woo, baby. Okay. So here's something that's really exciting for me. Sovryn Tech now accepts Zcash for donations. Oh yeah. Now, I know a lot of my listeners have used Windows machines, use Windows computers. Zcashforwin.com. That's Zcash, the number 4, win, WIN.com. You can now install the latest version of Zcash. This is a really, there's a little bit of instructions involved, but you can get a client of Zcash with shielded addresses and all that running on a Windows machine. You got to check this out. I'm so thankful for these guys. I think it's David Mercer is the guy that one of the guys that set all this up. So Zcash for Win, and then you can get in on using encrypted, the beautiful encrypted transmission of money. You could donate to Sovryn Tech, and of course, there's all the other ways to donate to Sovryn Tech: Bitcoin, PayPal, Patreon. The list goes on and on. But I love Zcash, and I can't wait for it to become more of a thing. So if you've been waiting to use Zcash on Windows, here's your chance. Anyway, let's get back to Sovryn Tech.
Internet of Targets.
Ooh, it is time for Internet of Targets, where we get to talk about the most terrible market category, one of the most just terrible ideas to ever come out of anywhere. And that is the Internet of Things. Just fucking horrendous. And as we always say on this show, what does the S stand for in Internet of Things? It stands for security. Guess what? Or what does the S stand for in IoT? Well, there's no S in IoT, so there's no security. And that's the problem. Speaking of which, this is a pretty unique situation that we're going to bring up this week during the Internet of Targets segment, which, again, this segment exists to warn people about, look, don't buy into this. Don't use it. Don't trust it. Don't make it a part of your life at all. Please send the market signal that it needs to die. Okay, and here's one example, and it's called Funtenna. And I'm going to read a little bit from RT, actually. And this is a few months. This is from August. Boy, this is like almost 2 years ago now. This is pretty old, but I don't think that we ever really covered it, and it's worth breaking into because this is something that even if they kind of, get it licked, it could still really, become a thing, or at least in some form or fashion. So a new hacking technique, reading it here, that uses sound and radio waves can siphon data from devices even without internet access. Showcased at the Black Hat Security Summit in Las Vegas, of course, this was back from 2015, the Funtenna hack has the potential to unravel the Internet of Things. By uploading a malicious program to a device, the hackers can vibrate the physical prongs on general-purpose input-output circuits at a frequency of their choice. The resulting vibrations can be picked up by an AM radio antenna. The setup, dubbed Funtenna by its creators, was presented to the audience at the Black Hat Hacking Conference, like I said, and it's by Q. Q, who recently completed a PhD at Columbia University, spoke with several reporters before his presentation, providing a preview of the technique. Unlike the previous hacking techniques, Funtenna works by turning the infected device into a transmitter. So this is where we got to be really particular. And I'm actually going to play for you some audio of what it does. But to understand what it means by a transmitter is that you can, just using the device and vibrations in certain ways, you can send out, radio frequencies effectively that where you can, because it's a smart device, right, quote unquote smart, okay, because it's IoT, that could transmit information that you could pick up, say, like with an AM radio, that like is speaking words. Wireshark or anything that's going on your network, okay, because this is the big thing, right, is that with IoT, is that, well, okay, if they were sending data out to the NSA or whatever, you could use a network analyzer, analysis software, and you could see if it was actually doing that. But guess what? Well, Alexa's not doing that. Okay, it's not doing that over your network, but what if in the short range, it was sending out some kind of information? What if it was turned into effectively, an AM transmitter that stuff could go out and be received? And who has an AM radio in their pocket? Well, how about I just play some of the audio for you? And this is kind of a remixed song version of it, but the words are exactly what could get sent out by any IoT device.
The temperature no reach target in long time 4 into idle. The temperature no reach target in long time. Wait motto stop then power on. Wait motto stop then power on. Someone try to start laser while it is running. Laser motor has failed. There is paper in exit. Wait paper leave feet. So long. Sensor shake or paper too short. WPSAP setup is locked because of probable attack. Because of probable attack. Because of probable attack. Probable attack. Attack.
Okay, so again, that was kind of like somebody put a little music to the background from it. That was coming from a printer, not over a network. That was being transmitted out, picked up by an AM radio, coming out from a printer. All of those words, you know, all the characters that it listed off and everything. And that could be done simply through, you know, just because of malicious software that could be put onto things. I mean, you know, old dot matrix printers and all that. I mean, they didn't, you know, that wouldn't have been a thing because they didn't, you know, have, they didn't have the smarts, you know, put into them. They didn't effectively have, like, say, a Raspberry Pi or an Intel Edison or something, you know, kind of baked in or whatever. You know, their functionality was far more basic, so there wasn't really any malicious code to even transmit or you know, not transmit, but malicious code to even upload, you know, into the printer, say. But now with everything having to be smart and everything's interconnected and everything's the Internet of Things, this is exactly what can happen because the smarts can be taken advantage of. And, you know, again, I mean, what could have come out of that? You know, and you could say, well, and I kind of hinted at this earlier, you can say to me that, well, yeah, but okay, if anybody can hear what's being transmitted, you know, and understand, this is just what, you know, I don't want to say some kid, obviously a brilliant guy. Okay, this is just what some very smart guy figured out that he could do. That's not even like, you know, the resources, let's say the FBI, CIA, AT&T, or NSA, or any of those other government organizations, like the ones I just listed off. Every single goddamn one of them is a government organization, including AT&T. You know, what could they come up with along these sorts of lines? And again, the only thing that makes it possible really is the fact that you baked in so many different features that you've effectively turned every single fucking device into a mini computer. And again, I keep harping on it, but I don't want you to get tired of, you know, don't get tired of hearing it because it's a reality. What brought down the internet on October 21st, 2016? What brought down the internet last year? I mean, or at least huge swaths of the internet. It was the fact that a botnet was able to get created by connecting to the millions of computers that are out there. Not Dells, not Lenovo's, not Apple, not Macs, not HPs that people own, but just the devices that they have, the light bulbs, whatever, you know, that all have effectively mini computers in them. Okay. And so here's the thing. You could say, well, if anybody can read it, you know, is anybody going to actually transmit anything crazy? Well, how many people carry around an AM radio with them? I do. I know. I have a little pocket one, like an old Magnavox that I've had for like 20 years that still works. Okay. I have that, but I'm an oddball in a lot of ways. But I'm an oddball. Most people aren't going around listening with their AM radios. I mean, and how many cars even like let it switch over to where nobody does that. So, you know, so much information could be going out from all these, my Alexa's connected to this from my light bulb. You know, so much information could be coming out from your light bulb. And you don't even know about it. And it's right under your nose, and it's not even encrypted. It's just that somebody smart enough has a setup, you know, to where they can receive that, you know, those signals. And anything, look, the printer was talking. Now, as smart as the printer is, I'm pretty sure the printer itself, you know, well, we know because that was being sent out, you know, through a transmission that wasn't actually like, you couldn't actually hear the printer saying that, of course. But I mean, like the printer doesn't really make much in the way of sound, certainly not to the ability that it, you know, it could be a vocoder, you know, to where it's saying words to you. Maybe some printers do that now. I don't know. But this is how bad this gets. This is what happens when you start baking in the smarts into things that really never should have needed the smarts in the first place. Your fucking IoT toothbrush could do this. Could be telling the whole world all kinds of shit. Could be giving out banking information. Could be giving, just all kinds of nonsense. When there's no need to have that shit in your fucking toothbrush. And again, no network analysis tool is going to find this. That's the key thing here. Okay? Because I get sick of that argument that, well, if your IoT was doing something weird, you would know. No, the only way I'm going to know is if I have a fucking AM radio sitting around, you know, listening seemingly at all times. Or I could do the far more practical thing and just not buy smart devices. How about that? Easy enough solution. Oh, that TV comes with smart things built into it? No, throw that in the dumpster. I'm not interested. Oh, that light bulb has a chip in it? Nah, that's okay. Can I just get a normal light bulb, please, before you make, before they're totally gone or illegal? Maybe I'll go on eBay and buy some Sylvanias out of India. Come on. Stop this. Stop this now. I say it every week, but I got to drive it into your head. Okay? You don't want this shit. You don't understand the amount of security exploits that it creates, because all a person has to do is upload some malicious code to, if anything, your fucking light bulb, and then you're never going to know. Or, I guess if you're into AM radio, and hey, that's cool if you are. I mean that. I'm dead serious. That's really fucking cool if you're into AM radio. By all means, have your AM radio going on at all times, and that way you can tell if you're... that could be a fun thing to do. Walk around, your relative's house with that.
The reviews are in, and Babylon 5's a winner. The New York Daily News says Babylon 5 could make Star Wars look like a walk in the park. The Chicago Sun-Times calls it a welcome addition to the sci-fi universe. Impressive, perfectly scaled for TV, raves the LA Times. And the Kansas City Star says Babylon 5 is one space station you're likely to want to visit frequently. See for yourself what everyone's talking about on Babylon 5.
Babylon 5 is available for download on your favorite torrent site. See it now to experience the greatest show in television history. Babylon 5.
Tech history.
It is time for Tech History, where we get to break into history and tech. Last week I got a lot of great response. People were fascinated by my conversation about that door, or that possible door into Antarctica, and the potential of a Nazi base and all this. People really, really love when I dig into that. And, while most of the time I want tech history more or less to be about tech that we use today and kind of perhaps the history or the progenitors behind it, in this episode, I'm going to go way back again, because I read a story that just blew my mind with its implications. But before I do, I'm going to get into this later. Like I said, I got back from seeing The Great Wall, which, by the way, you see some totally implausible things being done with that wall in that movie. just going to lay that out there. But I'm going to do a little review of John Wick, Chapter 2. And one of the cool things in John Wick Chapter 2 is that, this isn't a spoiler or anything, the organization was the Continental that John Wick kind of works for. They have sort of this old-timey setup where they're, using all these, old ways of rerouting telephones and everything. They have like a main office where they put through contracts and all this. The computers that they used were Commodore 64s and that. I thought that was awesome. That was so, so cool. I'll talk more about John Wick, in the next segment. So anyway, what I want to talk about right now is an incredible find, and I'm going to actually read from Gizmodo here. Of course, that's Gizmodo on Sovryn Tech. On Sovryn Tech and Sex and Science Hour, we call it Gizmodo. That's the new name for it. So, and this is from really actually a pretty smart guy, George Zavorsky, and it's this 3,000-year-old Bronze Age sword is absolutely incredible. Now, Stallion here, I'm going to give you a little hint. The impressive thing is not the sword in this story. I'm just going to read a little bit, and then we're going to talk about it. In what archaeologists are calling the find of a lifetime, a hoard of late Bronze Age weapons has been discovered at a Scottish construction site. Among the items found is a gold-decorated spearhead and a 3,000-year-old bronze sword in remarkably good condition. Now, trust me, we're going to get into why this is important to tech and history, okay, in just a second. The artifacts were found during an archaeological evaluation on a field in Carnoustie, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, Scotland, prior to the construction of two soccer fields. The firm commissioned to do the work, Guard Archaeology, says the hoard of ancient metalworks is, quote, rare and internationally significant discovery, end quote. The items were found in a pit close to a Bronze Age settlement currently being excavated by the archaeologists. The spearhead was found next to a bronze sword, a pin, and sheath fittings. All items which are dated to around 3,000 years old are archaeologically significant, but the presence of the gold-decorated spearhead is exceptional. So we're talking about, this is 1000 BCE, okay? or 9000 HE if you're counting that way. Quote, the earliest Celtic myths often highlight the reflectivity and brilliance of heroic weapons, end quote, explained Blair in an interview with the BBC. Quote, gold decoration was probably added to this bronze spearhead to exalt it both through the material's rarity and its visual impact, end quote. Now, Stallion breaking in quickly. Of course, making weapons entirely out of gold is a terrible idea. Yes, you would literally just do that for decoration. Why? Because gold is such a ridiculously soft metal. Of course, bronze is soft in comparison, to iron and steel, which is why you have, Bronze Age, Iron Age, etc., because you kept finding better and better metal to make things out of. So, yeah, this, I know there's, some people have some kind of wild notions. I'm sure they've been, those notions have been dispelled for a long time, but like the idea that, Excalibur was a gold sword and all this stuff, not a fucking chance, because then, it'd be the weakest sword in the world. But to accent things with gold, kind of commonplace, but maybe not so commonplace as we go through the story. Reading more here, other exceptional finds include well-preserved organic remains, for instance, a leather and wooden sheath that enveloped the sword. It's considered the best preserved late Bronze Age sheath ever found in Britain. The archaeologists also found fur skin wrapped around the spearhead and textile around the pin and sheath. Organic items like this rarely survive for so long in the ground. Based on the archaeological evidence, it appears that humans lived on this particular spot, and again, this is in Scotland, for an exceptionally long time. The excavation revealed the largest Neolithic hall so far found in Scotland, a building dating to around 4000 BCE. Now, okay, so like we said, the sword itself, the bronze sword that they were talking about, and that spear, kind of with the gold flaked on it, that was from 1000 BCE. But the hall that, the building that they found these weapons within is from 4000 BCE. Now that's a long time ago. I'm going to tell you more about that in just a second. This is where this story really gets interesting. This structure, write the researchers, quote, may have been as old to the people who buried the weapon hoard as they are to us. That sentence is really important, okay? Because what that is saying is like, okay, so we know that that the structure's from 4000 BCE. Okay. But the structure, or, we know that people had, the building was, dating around 4000 BCE, but that living area may have been an area where people lived and stored things for that amount doubled. Like it's as old. So, that building is from 4000 BCE. So that's 6,000 years old, approximately. But the living site itself may have been effectively another 6,000 years old. I mean, that's huge, for to consider that. What exactly that means. So I'll read just a little bit more. Along with the weapons hoard, the guard team has uncovered around 1,000 archaeological features in that area, including a dozen Bronze Age semicircular houses, a pair of long Neolithic era dwellings, and various broken pots and artifacts. It's not clear if this site was occupied continuously for thousands of years or if the settlements were separated in time by many centuries. Regardless, it doesn't appear that the local kiddies will be playing soccer on those ancient fields anytime soon. Now here's kind of the rub, and I think it's important to get some dates in mind, okay? Because the notion here is that, okay, there's the 6,000-year-old kind of Scottish hall, and what was going on there. Now, people living in Scotland, like hunter-gatherers, kind of showing up after, say, a glacial shift of some kind. I mean, it's theorized people have been in Scotland since, well, like 13,000 years ago or so. Okay, simple hunter-gatherer tribes that would end up there. As far as like, kind of the permanent buildings that you find, more permanent housing, yeah, saying around, 10,000 years ago, 9,000 years ago or so, not necessarily, that unheard of. Okay, but we're talking about relatively, kind of primitive people. So, before the Neolithic, the Mesolithic period and all this. So maybe that's not so strange, but the idea that there is, really kind of this civilization that made use of the specific area quite a bit. I mean, this gets into some interesting places. I mean, consider that Sumer that's largely considered like the, kind of the first urban civilization, they started based upon, their own proto-writing. That would have been like 3000 BC. Okay. Now, the earliest dating we can get for this area that we're talking about is 4000 BC. So this gets into, again, this gets into, whoa, wait a second, how long have humans actually kind of been gathering, in all these different areas? That's the wild importance of a find like this. I mean, and there's more to it too. I mean, and understand, like the pyramids didn't start getting built until, kind of the, like 2200 BCE, something like this. So this is all predating that. Not that the sword is necessarily from that time, though. There's something interesting about that. I'll get into that in a second. But pretty much this puts in play, kind of a setup of this style. Perhaps this ancient Scottish hall, if it's another 6,000 years old, that puts it at 10,000 BCE, which would put it right in time with, say, something like Göbekli Tepe, okay, which is in Turkey, which is also, again, that's what the Holocene calendar, when I keep saying 12,000, that's based upon the Holocene calendar, which is, that start date is when at least one of the dates that Göbekli Tepe had supposedly been built, which would have been about 12,000 years ago. Okay, which ends up being 10,000 BCE. The same time that apparently, kind of this Scottish, more interesting Scottish civilization in Scotland anyway, could have been getting set up and everybody's gathering and it becomes this very popular place. Now, admittedly, yes, they're saying, well, there's no really clear evidence either way as to whether or not this was inhabited for that entire time, but it's definitely been used quite a bit, and there's enough evidence there that it had been used over and over, like that same spot had been used over and over again for thousands and thousands of years. And so, I mean, like, I think that's the most mind-blowing part of the whole thing, is not that, well, they found the sword. Now, I mean, now that gets interesting because they were clearly trying to mimic, say perhaps these ancient legends that they had and all this by, putting gold on the blade and all that. All of that is very fascinating, but really it's the fact that there was some kind of civilization that ended up getting carried down for thousands of years that existed in Scotland. I mean, at a time when, like Göbekli Tepe, people don't necessarily like to talk about it because it fucks with the wall of history, where supposedly there was a spot where humans didn't really have civilization, say before, like Sumer, which again was only 3000 BCE. But then we keep finding these things and say, oh no, wait a second. Actually, there have been civilizations for thousands of years before that. And now Scotland might be one of those places. Why Scotland? Well, I don't have the answers to that one. But this just proves, for me, and something we've covered many a time on Sovryn Tech, is that the wall of history, when civilizations kind of first started, might be interesting to see what we find before that. And this was just another case. Woo! All right. While this isn't something BCE, it's certainly BTC, and that, of course, meaning Bitcoin. Boy, if you want to keep track of things that's going on, I mean, the Bitcoin price is going wild, all because Zcash, all this stuff's going wild. I want you to check out Crypto Compare, CryptoCompare.com. Just a website, I say it all the time, that I keep open nonstop. Check it out, CryptoCompare.com. We thank them for supporting Sovryn Tech.
The climax.
It is time for the climax, where I get to talk about whatever the hell I want to talk about. Movies, TV shows, comic books, topics, whatever. In fact, I had a great topic that I was going to bring up originally for the climax today, but I changed my mind, and I'm going to do it next week because I'm going to have I might be having a guest on. We'll see. But it was great audio, and, well, anyway, I'll save it for that. So, but instead, what I want to talk about is what I had mentioned earlier in the show, that I just got back from, just before recording this, from seeing The Great Wall. Of course, this is a Matt Damon vehicle, though that might be unfair to say. I also saw John Wick Chapter 2, and I'm just going to put it out there. Spoiler alerts. I'm really not going to intentionally go for spoilers because there's not a whole lot to spoil about the story. I mean, not really. But I'll put it out there, fair warning that it might come up. And there you have it. So anyway, as far as really between the two, John Wick Chapter 2 is certainly the better movie, but of course it was also the better bet because the first John Wick from 2014 is just already such a classic film. But I'll get into John Wick Chapter 2 in just a minute. So we'll start off talking about the Great Wall. Now, this is a movie that, well, I'm a little disappointed in what the, I mean, this happens all the time. I don't know what exactly the critics are expecting to see. Now, some critics will admit to this little fact. And just real quick, if you don't know the story behind the Great Wall or behind like this movie, it is definitely a fantasy film that just happens to take place around the Great Wall during like the Song Dynasty. Okay. So we're talking way, way back. And it's very open in that this is a legend and that and as far as I know, it's not based on any kind of like actual, Chinese legend. It's just a fun story, and they use the Great Wall as effectively, as a backdrop. That's it. So there's no grand history to go over, and the villain is this, bunch of monsters, very reminiscent of maybe Lord of the Rings, or reminiscent, perhaps more accurately, of Starship Troopers. In fact, really, that might be one of the best ways to describe the Great Wall, and I don't mean this derogatorily, in that it is, it's Starship Troopers in the past at the Great Wall of China. Okay. And instead of the bugs, you have these things called the Tao Te, which are these, kind of odd looking creatures. First off, the CGI, not the best in the world. So what? That doesn't mean shit to me. Movies with bad effects or with what today are considered bad effects are still great movies today and can still tell a great story. So I don't understand, just because a movie has bad effects, why that should really write it off, unless it's something that really, really, it has to so take you out of the fucking story, in my opinion, for it to count as an off. And it none of the effects did in this movie. There's one point towards the end where, I'll just say there's a swinging scene. I'll just put it that way. And I don't mean in a sexual way. Ooh, I wish it was though. But there's a swinging scene where, the effects look bad. One scene out of the whole movie, I can give you I'll give you one flub, but otherwise I thought the effects were fine. The music, Ramin Djawadi, I don't know if I'm exactly pronouncing his name right, but of course this guy's been scoring some of the best stuff in the world right now. He did a great job with scoring this. He's probably best known. He does a score for Game of Thrones, which is a terrible show with great music though. I'll give it that. And he scored Westworld, of course. He scored Pacific Rim. This guy's, really making a name for himself, and he can do a score on a grand scale, and he delivered, I think. The music is fantastic for the Great Wall. Better than the movie. Not that the movie's bad. I actually thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed the hell out of it. There's points where I laughed out loud. There's points where, I kind of jumped a little, and the explosions were impressive. It had everything really going for it. And I was also impressed because, the first half of the movie, I'm like, oh shit, it's a white savior film. Now, if you don't know, the white savior narrative is this idea of, you're in some foreign land and a white guy shows up and with his Western brilliance, which is bullshit, saves the day, right? And it's annoying. It's really fucking annoying. For me, or maybe for some of you, just imagine a film where, and when I say Christian, don't think Christ. I'm talking about an actual Christian. Say you're watching some even, somewhat historical or maybe modern day or something where, say a population of people that practice Judaism have a problem, and then suddenly a Christian shows up and saves the day. Wouldn't that be insulting to people that, that practice Judaism? Of course it would, because what the fuck is this Christian doing, coming in and saving, say it was some kind of spiritual battle and somehow the Christian wins or something. It's insulting that religion, right? So, this is something that happens with a lot of these films that take place heavily, within a foreign culture, foreign land, whatever. And, the white guy shows up and and it happens in the real world too. I remember when a lot of Bitcoin companies were trying to bring, Bitcoin to Africa, and in the, and you can ask these people that did it, okay, guys out of Europe and whatever, and they'll tell you that, a lot of the people in Africa looked at them and just laughed and said, oh yeah, we've seen you before. Here comes the white man with his gift, and it's bullshit, right? Right. It is. So, so anyway, but it ended up kind of not being that way. I was actually impressed. Really it showed off kind of a certain ingenuity, within this mythical Chinese culture. Not that the Song Dynasty was mythical, and it certainly was technologically advanced in a lot of ways, compared to what Western culture had, or, Western civilization, quote unquote, whatever the fuck that means, at the time had. So I didn't really think it fell too much into the white savior narrative. I won't, go into spoilers to kind of break that down, but I was kind of impressed by that. And it's also abundantly clear that this movie was not made for Americans. Like, not at all. This is not an American blockbuster by any stretch. Some critics are getting this point, or they're starting to get this point. For example, okay, so something that's happening in Hollywood right now, and I think this is confusing the fuck out of people because they're like, wait, this isn't my explosions. Even though this movie had great explosions. But Hollywood is starting to make movies that are China first. And what I mean by that is that they're making movies with the intent that they're going to make the bulk of their money by releasing it in China. And this is easily a case of that. In fact, it's plain as day because, this is a movie that is heavily subtitled. Most of the time, these people are speaking Mandarin, regularly. And you can tell just by the speed of the subtitles, there were points where I couldn't read them fast enough what was going on. And I'm not a slow reader by no means. And so really you can tell this was not made for an English first audience or an English speaking first audience. Which is fine. I think that's fantastic. And this has been a trend, which actually, Raymond Djawadi, he actually scored this movie as well. Ever since Warcraft, really, I think might be when kind of the war cry was heard in Hollywood that, oh boy, actually in China, we could make a ton of money, with these kinds of movies. Because, Warcraft ended up doing hundreds of millions of dollars in China, as to where in the US, it didn't do well at all. I think it barely broke like 60 million or something like that. We reviewed that on Sovryn Tech. We talked about this a bit there, in the past, which I liked Warcraft. I actually thought that was a good movie too. So there's a lot of, I dare say, how to put this, maybe Eastern attitudes, attitudes that I recognize, not that I'm any expert on China or anything, but certainly that I can appreciate from my own appreciation of Japanese culture, that kind of worm their way in it. It's very different. A lot of the stylings that are in the film, you really, really see, kind of that Asian quality to it. And I think that's why a lot of the critics are like, what the fuck is this? And they make fun of it and all that because they just don't understand. This movie wasn't made for you. In fact, it came out first, in Asia, and then it came out in the US, 3 months later. And yeah, it shows, and so I laugh when critics rip on a movie like this when it's so clear that they're fucking, they're baked in Western civilization. This needs to be Citizen Kane or something, goes off because it's like, well, you idiots didn't fucking get who the film was for. It wasn't for you unless, you're somebody that can actually branch their brain out a little bit and understand that, oh, there is more than one culture in the world. And, and they can watch this movie and they can see it for what it is and understand, the spectacle and kind of like the little moments where it gets into the fantastic, to the, where human abilities leap into the fantastical out of nowhere, seemingly, in Chinese film, in Asian film, I guess I'll say, that happens all the time. It's perfectly normal for that sort of thing to occur. Okay, it's where, you're looking, oh no, that doesn't make any sense. Why was she suddenly able to do that jump or something? Anyway, it's so funny. You can see the bias like there's no tomorrow. Not that I'm saying there's necessarily anything wrong with bias, but it's a shame because I thought this was a good film. I really appreciated it. And I went in honestly knowing, I knew that this was definitely going to be a China first film. And it got proved to me within the first 5 to 10 minutes of it. Now, ironically, one of the things being kind of held against this movie is that the acting is terrible. Again, a lot of it's subtitled, and I don't think most critics have, shall we say, the chops to be able to really say whether or not, how something's being delivered in Mandarin, if that's good acting or not. I really don't think they do. But I will say this, in my opinion, the worst actor in this movie is Matt Damon, because he's not, for once, and kudos to him for this. For once, he's not being Matt Damon. Everybody's like, oh, he was great in The Martian. Well, he's playing Matt Damon. He's not actually playing the character out of, Andy Weir's book, right? And that goes true for a lot of things that he does. It works for him in the Bourne movies because he kind of doesn't have to act or talk much. which is fine, and that takes a special kind of acting to do that. But my point being is that when Matt Damon isn't being Matt Damon and he has to talk a lot, he's not that great of an actor. He really can't not be himself. He's great at being himself. I don't want to take anything away from him, and I enjoy a lot of his movies. But there you have it. So he was really the weak spot of the film, like by a long shot, which is okay because also I think it kind of helped from the movie falling into the white savior narrative. So anyway, Great Wall, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the hell out of it. I had a good time. I didn't think there was a stitch of it that was boring. You can also tell it wasn't made for American audiences because really at the end, all right, let's just say there's not a whole lot of romance in the film. How about that? Okay, there, I'll just put it that way to you. So now shifting gears, speaking of the other movie that I caught this week was John Wick Chapter 2. Now, I won't spend a ton of time on this one because, the review of it isn't half as interesting as perhaps, with The Great Wall. With John Wick Chapter 2, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting, right? Like these kinds of, noir films, you know what you're going into. And this is made by, of course, this is this is definitely a Keanu Reeves vehicle. And Keanu Reeves is really, I think, kind of that unique actor that can pull this kind of quiet assassin. I mean, if you haven't seen the first John Wick, look, sorry, deal with it. You're getting spoilers. Okay. I highly recommend the movie. But Keanu Reeves can really pull off kind of this deadpan assassin. And he has really ever since The Matrix, of course. He has that kind of action credibility where he can make a lot of kung fu, a lot of, odd moves look legit. And he does a good job in John Wick too. The action in this is top notch. And speaking of The Matrix, Lawrence Fishburne is also in this. And this is the first time the two of them had been back on screen. And I'll admit, like I made a little cheer when I saw, Lawrence Fishburne come on, obviously who played Morpheus and Keanu Reeves who played Neo. But yeah, same guys that did it. Chad Stahelski, right, was the director, and Derek Kolstad did the writing. I'll tell you this, there's probably going to be, a John Wick Chapter 3, and I think they already said there's going to be a sequel, so I'm not giving that away. That's out there in the news, folks. I can't wait. Like I am definitely on board for that. So again, I mean, the main thing here is the action, the story. Whatever the plot is, it kind of doesn't matter because you're really just looking, when you go to see a movie like this, these kind of like one-man assassin movies, which it's one of my favorite genres. But when you go to see these, you know what you're going to get, right? I mean, you know what you're expecting. Tyler Bates did the score. I always love to talk about the music. Tyler Bates did a hell of a job with the score. In fact, they even brought in, a couple of guests for it, that did very well also, but really enjoyed Tyler Bates's work. So, yeah, I mean, it delivers on all counts. Action's great. Driving sequences are great. Keanu Reeves, I mean, there's points that are very funny. And the nice thing about the John Wick movies is they're kind of over the top. They're kind of almost slapstick in its style, which makes it, it makes them pretty endearing. There's a concept in Hollywood called a movie being self-aware. It's called self-awareness. All right. Now we all know what self-awareness means psychologically for an individual, but self-awareness for a film is a very important thing. And that is, and I wish critics had self-awareness or recognized the self-awareness that The Great Wall had, that it's not meant for American audiences. It getting released in America is just a bonus. Okay. John Wick, these movies, they're self-aware that they're kind of ridiculous, over the top, and whatever. And so it works because they play off of it as a strength instead of them trying to be a critical darling. And it turns out beautifully. Like the Fast and the Furious movies, they're very self-aware. They know they are comic book action. Okay, with this, kind of machismo, mi familia, concept going for it. Okay, they're self-aware. So it's great because it knows what it is. Right now, I mean, there's movies that aren't self-aware where they're great because they didn't realize just maybe how bad they were or what they were really, delivering out there. That's kind of the difference between a movie being self-aware and not. But anyway, the John Wick movies, very self-aware, and it shows. And this one, I think the first one's still better. But John Wick Chapter 2 is, I mean, it's right up there. Like it's just off, from being just as good as the first one. So I thought it was fantastic. I'll tell you the breakout star though is Keanu Reeves is fine. But the breakout star here was definitely Ruby Rose. She is, all right, first off, she's hot. I'll say that right now. But she was also the breakout star for a film a month ago, that being XXX Return of Xander Cage. That's a movie that's also self-aware. It knows it's going to be ridiculous. She played kind of the lesbian assassin in that, and she did just top notch. She looks so good, and she looks so legit, and she pulls it off. I mean, that's great acting. And in this, she was quiet through the whole film, playing kind of a foil to John Wick. And she was great. I mean, like, that takes a lot. In fact, one of my favorite movies, just bar none, not just science fiction, but just one of my favorite movies is Soldier with Kurt Russell from the 90s. Okay, Paul W.S. Anderson and all that. And in that, like, one of the things I love is just how good Kurt Russell is at being absolutely silent. Mostly silent through the film, but delivering so much emotion and delivering exactly what that character is all about. Ruby Rose did that in this film as well, and I think she really stole the show. She was totally believable, totally legit, just like she was in the new XXX movie, Return of Xander Cage. And for her to be able to play off of big action stars, I mean, she played off of Vin Diesel in XXX. She's playing off of Keanu Reeves. I mean, she has a name for herself. She's the real deal. So I thought that was awesome. Now, I mean, like I said, I love these kinds of movies. Like, I'm trying to think of some examples of this. You could kind of say the Jason Bourne movies are this way. I don't think so exactly. But there's a style of this film. It really comes out of kind of Hong Kong, where you have these movies where it's like just this really quiet actor, who's the Chow Yun-fat used to be kind of the king of this stuff. And of course, he never really took off in America, even though they tried to in the 90s with the Replacement Killers. But yeah, I really enjoy that kind of film quite a bit. In fact, Jean-Claude Van Damme did one of the best ones. I loved this movie. And the movie it came out in 2011, and it was called Assassination Games. And he just pulled it off, where he's this, really like quiet assassin. In fact, honestly, a lot of times, these guys are really, they're usually wearing all black or something. They're given all the visual cues that they're this mysterious, and intelligent and methodical character that you don't want to fuck with or something, right? And John Wick plays up on that, and it takes it, just to a kind of a newer level where it can be a little more comedic. It doesn't have to take itself so seriously. I think that's why it works so well. That's why it doesn't seem like a trope, because it does have that element of ridiculousness and kind of comedy to it. So yeah, again, both movies, they both came out. I think they had the same opening weekend, and it doesn't matter what Great Wall did against John Wick Chapter 2, because frankly, Great Wall, the money wasn't meant to be made in America. Okay, as to where with John Wick Chapter 2, it certainly was. So I was pleased with both. Definitely John Wick Chapter 2 is, I mean, easily the better, of the two, if you really had to pick one that you wanted to see. But Great Wall, lots of fun. Just understand, this is not a traditional, I mean, I compare it to Lord of the Rings, but it's not Lord of the Rings. This has so much, real like Asian style, Asian ideal, just Asian ways of thinking, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I'm not saying it's bad or whatever. I'm just saying that there's differences. There's different styles in Asian cinema that have been developed over decades compared to American cinema. There it is. Okay, that doesn't mean one's inferior or superior to the other. And it really delivered on that. And I was just very pleased, to see that on the big screen, just because it's so rare that we get those kinds of movies, in the U.S. So yeah, but if you really, if you had to choose, definitely go with John Wick. But The Great Wall, I enjoyed it. Anyway, enough of that. There you go. There's your two movies, baby. And I enjoyed like I said, I enjoyed both of them. I mean, I'm not going to put them in my top 100 films of all time. I mean, they wouldn't break that for a second. But they're up there. They're good. Certainly movies that if they happen to be on somehow, I would watch them again. I mean, definitely John Wick Chapter 2, actually. I will be watching that again. I can guarantee you that. So anyway, there you have it. Enough for this week. Whew. If you want to donate to the show, please don't hesitate. Just go to sovryntech.com. That takes you right to the Patreon page. Okay, you can become a patron. We get more patrons every week, and everybody's loving the shit. And thank you so much for that. And don't forget, you can also donate with Zcash. Zcash address is in the show notes, along with Bitcoin, all kinds of ways. Anyway, thank you so much. Woo! And I'll see you next week, and I'll see you, you know it, on the other side. Woo!
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. Copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.